and welcome to the Bodyshop sessions. Today we're talking about adapting to change, two technologies changing body repairs forever. My name is Michel, Malik. I am the publisher of Bodyshop news magazines around the world. And with me today I have three colleagues, and I'll let them introduce themselves. So on my right here, Nick Halliwell from Snap-on, or what do we call it now?
We call it Snap-on.
Call it Snap-on, okay, we'll call it Snap-on. So Nick, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Hello everyone, Nick Halliwell. I'm the Special Projects Manager for Europe, focusing around ADAS. I've been in the industry for 20 years, from engineering in garage equipment, MOT equipment, right the way up to the ADAS field. That's my working history. I enjoy paddleboarding, anything to do with water sports, wakeboarding. That's me.
Just don't tell us about the football, okay?
No football mentioned.
Okay, no football today. All right, Dave Luehr. Dave is from the USA. He's actually from Elite Bodyshop Solutions, and he's been around the industry for a while. So welcome, Dave. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks for having me, Michel. Great to see everybody. You guys can sit a little closer if you like, too. So my name is Dave Luehr. I am the owner and founder of Elite Bodyshop Solutions and a new leadership brand called the Limitless Entrepreneur. And we champion small businesses, independent collision operators with management, operational and leadership education in North America, and we have online products that serve clients all the way around the globe. So look us up. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dave. Last but not least is Robert Snook. Robert is the IBIS Moderator. He's also the owner of MG Cannon. It's a group of an MSO of about 7 or 8 shops. Robert, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, Michel, it all started with my great-great-great-grandfather. Oh,
I better sit down.
Should I do the quick version?
I'll sit down, yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'll do the quick version instead. So I'm here with a dual role. So as Michel said, I'm a conference moderator for IBIS, and we moderate collision repair conferences and deliver them around the world, North and South America, Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. When I'm not doing that, as Michel said, I'm an owner of an MSO body shop group in the UK called MG Cannon. We have 8 sites, 37 different vehicle manufacturer brand approvals, and we've been fortunate enough to win UK Body Shop of the Year 7 times now. So enough to keep me out of mischief and keep me very busy.
Welcome aboard. Thank you, Robert. All right, so I'll just explain to you very simply. We're going to talk about essentially EVs and ADAS today. And we're going to have a few questions. It's going to be a fast pace. Hopefully you won't fall asleep through this. So I'm going to start with the questions, and at the end we have a Q&A. You're quite welcome to be involved and ask the questions from our panel. So I'm going to ask the big question about ADAS is how important is ADAS in body repairs? And I'll put my first question to Nick. How many vehicles on the road have ADAS fitted? And how important is it to identify ADAS on a vehicle coming in for repair?
Thank you. We'd estimate it currently worldwide at 45% of the vehicles on the market have ADAS equipped. That being said, not all have them, so you need, when the vehicle comes in for a repair, you need to identify it so that you're not missing a function. You could be missing blind spots. You could only identify a camera and not realize it has the other functions around it. So when the vehicle comes in, every vehicle, no matter whether you think it's got ADAS or not, should be identified.
Okay. Now, if I can ask Dave, what choices will repairers have with ADAS? Do they have any choices?
Well, I guess they have got a choice to be in the collision repair industry or not.
Sure.
But you know, the world's changed dramatically. You know, we were talking earlier that our panel beaters or repair technicians have to become electronic experts, mechanical experts, and so really the choice, I believe, is how how we're going to be dealing with the ADAS-equipped vehicles, right? Are we going to try to do it all in-house? Are we going to try to sublet some of it? So I think those are really our choices. How do we structure our businesses to allow for something that's very unavoidable, and that's ADAS?
Well, talking about ADAS again, so Robert, what if a body shop doesn't have the capability to repair or recalibrate ADAS?
Well, Michel, a lack of capability, skills, equipment, training is just simply no excuse. The risk and exposure to future liability of returning an unsafe vehicle back to the customer, one that's not been calibrated or been incorrectly calibrated, is not worth it for either the corporation or the individual employee in that. So if there's a body shop who doesn't feel they are capable of doing it, what they need to do is to just refuse the job. It is never, ever worth the risk to the business, to the employee doing that repair, or to the member of the public driving the car after you return an unsafe vehicle. It should simply be refused.
So how does ADAS change the repair process? Nick, when should ADAS be checked? Who should do it? And how do we do that?
So ADAS should be checked the minute the vehicle is coming in. What kind of accident has it been in? Has energy transferred during that accident? It could be a small bump in the rear of the vehicle, but that energy could have dislodged the camera at the front, could have dislodged the radar. So ADAS needs to be checked whenever a vehicle is coming into the workshop.
Okay. Dave, we need to source the correct repair methods. But what are the correct repair methods? And more importantly, which ones are not the correct repair methods?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's actually kind of a hot debate in North America. What are, and there's only one correct repair method, I think everybody would agree, and that's from the manufacturer. I believe the big question becomes, how do we access that information? For example, there's several aftermarket companies that will get the OEM information for you, but the big debate is over the lag time, because there are proponents that say the only correct repair method is the most current, directly from the manufacturer. So
yes,
that's
correct.
where the debate begins. How do we access it, and what is the lag time between it being current information? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Robert, what considerations and challenges are there at the estimate and then at the authorization stage?
Well, the first consideration is your estimator. You need to train your estimator to understand and be able to estimate this correctly. You should see this as an investment, not a cost, and ask yourself the question, can I afford to train my estimator correctly, or can I afford not to? It's not just sales or profit, it's liability. So you must train your estimator. When you do that correctly, you need to make sure that that estimator is capable of understanding what the technology is, understanding what needs to happen at pre-check, understanding the correct repair method, allocating the right staff to the job. What about parts? What about tooling? What about recalibration? What about post-checks? What about potential problems that might show up along the way, and how do you manage those? A trained estimator can manage that entire repair plan all the way through, whereas an untrained one can't. The general challenges, Michel, tend to show up at authorization stage.
Yes.
And the root cause of this is always a mismatch between the knowledge of your estimator and the knowledge and awareness of the insurance engineer. COVID has vastly accelerated the technology like this coming on the road. And insurance repair contracts with body shops have not kept pace with that change. So therefore, the insurance engineer is auditing you against a repair contract that has no provision for ADAS calibration, because when that contract was issued and signed, this technology didn't exist on the road.
It's true.
The insurance companies do not just not want to pay you for a safety-related operation. No insurance company does that. They just don't know it's required. So you have to provide the evidence. Always remember, insurance companies will authorize and pay for evidence, not truth or opinion. You need to supply the evidence.
I'd love to know if there's anybody from the insurance industry here.
Did you call the Can I have a mic? Did you call it an insurance engineer? So they get to be called engineers, but the body shop is still an guesstimator?
Yes, well, perhaps a local terminology, but yeah, I mean, I think the body shop training has accelerated faster than the insurance company engineer training, for sure. And IBIS, we see this all across the world. This isn't a UK issue or an Italian issue. At IBIS, we see this in every region we operate, the same challenge coming up.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now, Nick, we can now start the repair process. Does ADAS change the way the technician does a pre-check and approaches the repair?
Yes, most certainly it does. They have to identify many more items on the vehicle now. The old repair process would have been checking the bumper, checking the slam panels behind it. Now we need to go back and identify the modules on the vehicle, what hardware they're running, what firmwares they're running. If I remove this module, am I going to have to pre-program it before it goes back on the vehicle to be calibrated? All of these things have to be thought about through the process.
Okay. Now the repair is now complete. This is Nick again, don't run away. The repair is now complete and the ADAS needs calibration. What best practices are there and what common mistakes do we need to avoid?
So fundamentally, we need to follow the OEM's procedure. We need to work out how they want to calibrate it, how they want it calibrated, and follow it implicitly. That will keep you on the right track and allow you to calibrate the car successfully.
Okay. Robert, the final task are the road test and the quality control.
Yes.
But if the calibration has been done, do we still need to do a road test? And what are the final QC points to consider?
Yes, it's a very good point, and it's a common misconception again at IBIS. We see this around the world. Despite the fact you having the latest calibration and carrying it out correctly, a road test is still absolutely critical. It's the only way you can absolutely assure these systems are working properly again before you return the car. Now, it's important to also think about the road test itself. No longer with ADAS is the road test a pop around the corner, the quietest or most convenient road carried out by any technician that's available for 5 minutes. It must be a currently competent technician, and you must choose the road test route very, very deliberately. You're looking to calibrate a LiDAR, radar, and other safety systems. Imagine if you did a road test through 100 kilometers of featureless desert. It would be a complete waste of time. So you need to choose your road test route to make sure that it contains all the right hazards to ensure that calibration is going to be picked up and be 100% right.
Thank you. Now, Dave, not all repairers are doing this in-house. Some are outsourcing the calibration needs. So what are the benefits and challenges of subcontracting ADAS repairs?
That's a great question, too. Who wrote these questions? In the United States, it's such a large landmass. So what we're seeing is that in metropolitan areas, it's much easier to sublet to either a dealer or an independent company that specializes in ADAS calibrations. Companies like Aztec, for example, they'll build a calibration center right in your facility if you have a large enough facility. Or they sometimes have centralized in metropolitan areas. Well, they'll come and take the car over to their calibration center, which is quite nice. But then you get out to a rural area, out in the country, out in the sticks as we call it, and you may be faced with towing a vehicle 100 miles to a dealership to perform these calibrations. And what we're finding, according to a lot of my clients, is many of these dealers are not properly equipped or trained to deal with the calibrations either. I don't know if you guys see that, but it's a very common problem. Yeah.
So, okay, so with that, Nick, tell us, what are the biggest challenges body shops are facing with doing ADAS repairs in-house?
Training, number one.
Okay.
As we've said before, the panel beaters are experts in what they do. They do an incredible job making the car and bringing it back to drivable state. What they're now having to do is to return the car to a completely different state, ready to crash state. So the car comes in for a repair, having had a crash, it needs to go back on the road to be safe and ready if there was another crash again.
Okay.
So,
Robert? Sorry.
training, equipment, and knowing all the OEM procedures of the different manufacturers. You said 37 manufacturers that you have in-house, so that's 37 different manufacturers that he has to keep up to date on and know each procedure individually.
Robert, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Nick's right. Yeah, we like a download of methods and we like an audit in MG Cannon. So the other thing I was going to add to what Nick was just saying there, a challenge we see commonly coming up, what people haven't planned for, is space. Nearly every body shop bay around the world is 8 meters by 4 meters. We're heading for 360 recalibration on vehicles, and you're going to need a bay 9 meters by 15 meters to be able to do that. A calibrated flat 4 bay that does not block up all the gangways in your body shop. So training, absolutely, Nick, is right. But also space. Body shops need to think about, how am I going to manage the space to give me the space to calibrate 360 vehicles? Because you're going to need 15 meters by 9 meters for a reasonable sized vehicle.
Thank you. We'll just give it a minute just to get out of this. So what I'd like to talk now is about EVs. So we move away from ADAS calibration. And Robert, we'll start with you. What are EV customers? Sorry, I'll rephrase that question in a different way. Are EV customers different? And do we see anything new with them?
Yeah, they're very different. And this is something we only learned when we started repairing EVs in the very early days when we became Tesla approved. The EV customers are very invested in technology and very interested in technology. So this is everything in their life. We only see the phone element and the car element, but they are very invested in that technology. So what that means is you really have to work on 3 pillars with EV customers. It's transparency, and it's trust, and it's clarity. They will know what you are doing to their car before you, the manager, knows. I'll give you an example from one of our EV customers in the early days. I saw the customer in the local community and said, "I'll just let you know, I saw your vehicle going into paint on Friday, all on course, it looks fabulous, we'll be back to you next Wednesday." And the customer said, "Yes, I know, you moved it into the paint shop about 9:30, didn't you?" The app had recognized that the car was in an unfamiliar location, being driven by an unfamiliar driver, and the app had alerted the customer that the car was potentially being stolen. See, I could not have bluffed that customer and told him that the car was going to be early or late or any different. He knew exactly the status of that car from the app on his phone.
That is fabulous. That's amazing. But I believe you, because, I mean, we see all of these things all the time. So, Dave, what are the biggest concerns regarding EV in terms of repairs in body shops today?
I would say there's 2 primary things. First is safety, and second is fear. Just not understanding the technology has a lot of people very fearful. And uneducated people could potentially become injured working with an EV if they don't know what they're doing. So training is paramount to overcome the fear. Now, the funny thing is I've got several clients, some that specialize in EV repairs in the United States, primarily doing Teslas like everybody else. And they tell me it's actually, once you are trained properly, they're actually easier to work on. There's less moving parts. They can get lower skilled technicians trained to work on certain aspects of the overall repair job. And so I'm actually being told that they're actually easier to work on and compared to a typical ICE vehicle.
Okay, so Nick, is the future just EV or repairing everything, or could you just do ICE as an internal combustion engine vehicle repairs?
I think largely it depends on the business and the area, but you have to look for the future vehicles. you have to look at everything. Hydrogen is being spoken about now. We have electric vehicles. The ICE engine is going to be around for a long, long time yet. All different model variants. The body shop industry needs to go with all the technologies.
Okay, so Robert, what should a body shop have in place as minimum before starting EV repairs?
Yeah, there's no one global core minimum list that you need. But if anybody would like a list of what we would strongly recommend based on our experience and what we see around the world with IBIS, if anyone would like a list of that or some more information, I'll be staying here for a few minutes after this seminar. Come and find me, give me your email address, and I'll send you the information. But generally, Michel, it would typically involve things like a range of signage. You need signage that covers every stage of the repair process and the status of that vehicle at that stage. As an owner of a body shop, if you have one sign and that stays on the vehicle all the way through your workshop, there's a big red flag there. You need other things like insulated helmets, flash-resistant overalls. You need 3 types of glove, even at this level of detail. This is high voltage. So the first glove you need is a thin cotton glove. And what this does is protects the inside of the next layer of glove from things like wedding rings and things like that. So you need thin cotton gloves. Over the top of those, you should wear proper Class O certified high voltage rubber gloves. Okay? These rubber gloves have a lifespan of 6 months. So the first time you use the pair, best practice would be to write the date inside the glove, and then after 6 months, no matter how many times you've used them, you dispose of them. And then the third type of glove would be a heavy duty rigger type of glove, where you would handle damaged panels with sharp edges and things like that. You cannot risk even the slightest cut to the Class O rubber gloves. Even down to the level of detail like a pneumatic glove inflator. So you inflate the rubber glove before you put it on to make sure there are no little splits that you weren't aware of. Simply getting your technician to blow into the glove like a balloon is not sufficient. And then, of course, you have the obvious things like an HV multimeter, insulated tooling, quarantine area, and all those other things. But like I said, if you want a list of what we would suggest based on our experience, come and find me and I'll let you have it.
This is mind-blowing, but I'm going to ask you, what do I need to consider now with repairing EVs? I'm going to ask the question to you since you're really into it. Do we need to do anything different when receiving damaged EV vehicles?
Yeah, this is a very, very common discussion at IBIS events around the world again. And is this misconception of the body shop owner that he's got an HV-trained senior technician. And the gap that they haven't understood is that that person might be the 4th person to touch that EV when it arrives on site. All of the risk is at the start. The collection and delivery driver, the recovery driver, the receptionist, and the vehicle valeter. They are not going to be as technically aware, and they probably won't be as trained. So in our experience, and what we do is we have a currently competent, trained person that assesses every vehicle that comes on site. And there are really 3 answers from that assessment. The first one is, it's okay, it's cosmetic damage, it's absolutely fine, carry on. Or, I'm not quite sure, I'm just going to test it with an HV multimeter and then give it the okay. And the third is, this is definitely not okay, it's a serious accident. And that vehicle will then go to the quarantine bay. But don't underestimate the risk to your first people touching the car. They're probably going to be slightly lower aware technically, and will need training as well in EV awareness. Simply going up and touching a vehicle to open the door could be a safety incident. Dave,
what things need to happen at the point of the vehicle checking or being checked in?
I think a lot of things that Robert said.
I was going to drop the question because Robert said everything virtually.
Well,
anyway,
sorry, Dave.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine, and you said it more eloquently than I probably would have. So, but he's absolutely right. A shop absolutely must have trained personnel. Right? It may not be everybody in the shop, but there need to be certain individuals. Their responsibility is to receive that vehicle. They've been properly trained and tested, right? That they know what they're doing. What worries me is all the people prior to the check-in process that are going to be touching that car. The tow truck drivers, You know, they worry me. Somebody's going to get hurt.
And hopefully tow truck drivers would be trained into evaluating the fact that it's an EV, not an ICE vehicle, and what do we do with that one?
No, Dave's right, and it sort of comes back to the point Nick made earlier. You might have 2 or 3 options for a recovery agency working for you. You may just have one, and it'll be a different situation whether you're in a town or out in a rural area. But you need to make sure that they're aware, because all they're going to do is pass the problem to you. So as Dave was saying, you don't have to have everyone trained to the same level, but you need to work out who needs to be EV aware, who needs to be trained a little bit more, who needs to be the senior technician, and put each one of your staff into one of those 3 pots and train them to that level.
Okay, Nick,
Can I just ask from there, are your inspectors checking every vehicle that comes in? Because we could have a hybrid lurking, an A3, for instance, that has hybrid, but they assume it's just an ICE engine.
Every vehicle that has electric capability, whether it's hybrid, PHEV, BEV, battery electric vehicle, they're all checked. They have to be. It is not worth the risk. You, as a director of the company, are liable, and just saying, I didn't have time to train them, or the budget to train them, is not going to be an excuse.
all right, thank you. Nick, just quickly, are repair methods available for all EVs, and how clear are they?
So, depending on the manufacturers, repair methods can vary massively. If you take VAG, for instance, they have an itemized repair method, and everything is very clear. Go to some of the other manufacturers, and they may be more vague with their answers, but they will always give you the points they want you to cover.
Okay. Now, Robert, a short answer, okay? Because this is a big question.
Okay.
How important is it to power down the car? And do we need to de-energize the car every time? And how do we know that we've done it safely?
Okay, well, sorry for the longer answers. I get excited about this sort of stuff. You need to check every vehicle, but it's not necessary to fully power down every vehicle. But that decision needs to be made by a currently competent person, not just the nearest person available. So if they say it's okay, it's only cosmetic repair, that's fine. Otherwise, if it needs powering down, you need to do it and then test it's been done properly. In a case of a heavier collision, voltage could have leaked out around into the battery casing, for example. So you need to make sure that it's isolated. You're not removing the power from the car. It's important to remember that. You're not removing all of that electricity from the car. You're isolating it in a controlled space. And the only way you can test that is with an HV multimeter.
All right. So Dave, is there anything different to the panel technician when repairing an EV?
Yes and no. Obviously, the training and safety aspect is a game changer, right, for the panel technician. And as a panel technician, I assume we're talking about like a panel beater or a person that works on the exterior panels of the vehicle, right? So in that case, yeah, there's some safety training, but you know, the construction of the cars themselves are really not that much different. I think in the upcoming years, we've got so many new models coming out that the answer to that question could potentially change. But so far, I mean, the vehicle construction, other than the use of the high usage of aluminum or aluminium or whatever you call it here,
It works.
you know, so you would need to be trained on how to work on aluminum panels as opposed to steel or
And carbon fiber.
yeah,
and all sorts of things,
but
yeah.
what I'm being told from my clients is once you understand the safety aspects of the vehicle, the panel repair is essentially the same.
Okay. So Robert, does an EV require any change to the paint operation?
Yes, it does. You should not bake an electric vehicle at high temperatures for a sustained amount of time. It carries real risk to the high voltage elements in the car. So at the moment, you're probably not seeing too much of an effect of that. If you're doing 1 or 2 EVs a week or 1 or 2 EVs a month, it's probably not holding up your production much. But you imagine in a very short space of time when 90% of your vehicles could be EV, you're going to have to really change your workshop loading and allow for losing that extended bake time in technicians' breaks or at the end of the day. As I said, at the moment, you're not seeing too much of an impact, but as it gets more common, this will impact more, not being able to bake an EV vehicle like you can an ICE vehicle.
Okay, so Dave, how do we re-energize the car in the refit, and how do we know it's safe and correct for the handover?
The method that most of my EV shops are using are strictly abiding to the OEM procedures, much like de-energizing it, but also following the precise instructions of the diagnostic tool as it's being re-energized and then testing it. Yeah.
Okay. Nick, are there any final changes to consider at the quality control, valet, and handover stages?
Yes, certainly. We now need to do a full test of the vehicle, no matter what has been done, whether it's EV, whether it's ADAS. We need to test that everything is working properly. Down to if you're doing a static calibration for ADAS, it's commonly perceived that you do the calibration, the car is ready to go. No, it must have a proper road test, as Robert said. You still must check that everything is okay and that the calibration has been successful.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a big question now. How do I need to manage these technology changes? Dave, we start with you because you deal with a lot of people. What about staff? Will their existing staff be okay, or do they need new people?
I'm actually kind of excited about the new technology coming out because I believe that we can now bring on a whole new breed of young people that are going to be interested in our trade where perhaps they weren't before. So I'm actually excited about the opportunity to train new people from other industries, from the young people coming out of schools, how to work on this new technology. I'm really excited about the future, actually. And yeah, I believe in certain cases we can train our existing staff, but I'm also excited about bringing in new people as well.
Okay. So Nick, how can we train our staff to be safe and ready for ADAS and EVs?
So sorry, we need to keep investing in the people, give them a training program, make sure they're doing the learning. Don't do the learning in-house. Make sure the learning is outside where they're not going to be disturbed. I noticed a training course recently that was going on in a workshop, and half of the people that were being trained kept disappearing to go and answer the phone, or this customer really needs to speak to you. No, go outside, go to an outside source and learn properly. Take an assessment, create a training program, and do a CPD.
Okay. Robert, you have a lot of body shops under your control. Will existing equipment be okay, or do you need to reinvest in new equipment?
A lot of your existing equipment will probably be okay, but what you need to do is take all of that history away and look at it through a new lens, and look at it in the context of electric vehicle and ADAS repairs. To give you some idea, an electric vehicle, a full BEV, battery electric vehicle, will have gained about 300 to 500 kilos in weight compared to its previous ICE equivalent. Now that's potentially going to impact things like the weight limit of your recovery vehicle. Will that still be capable of returning that battery electric vehicle 4x4 safely to your workshop? What about the ramps? What about the trolley jacks? What about the axle stands? All of this equipment needs to be assessed through the context of electric vehicles and the increased weight. And then if you highlight any gaps, anything that's not going to be suitable going forward, you really need to think about investing in it, not just buying it. Why are you really buying it? Is it because the body shop down the road bought it, so I better get one? Is it because a salesman told you you needed it? Or is it part of a strategic, well-thought-out business plan? You're going to face a lot of investment going forward with ADAS and EV, and you need to spend it wisely.
Very good questions. Now, Dave, what changes do we have to make to the premises to do ADAS or EV repairs?
So depending on how much we're willing to do in-house versus how much we may sublet, in terms of EV, some considerations are battery storage. That's a common concern. But you know, as he mentioned, the space in meters for a calibration center was what was it?
A reasonable vehicle will be 15 meters by 9 meters.
Yeah, I only know feet, so.
Just multiply by 3, roughly.
So it's a big space, and that is definitely a concern. But what's kind of neat is in the U.S. there are people building their own like ADAS centers that they're subletting their own repairs to, and this is a brilliant idea, profitability-wise, but it also gives them a nice big space to do whatever they need to properly.
Yeah, sounds good. Nick, do we need a plan to manage static, dynamic, and automatic ADAS calibration, or are we better waiting for some common system that will work and self-calibrate, perhaps?
Largely, we don't know where the technology will end up in 5 to 10 years' time, but we need to manage all of them right now. We need to be able to repair the next vehicle that comes in. Don't think that static calibrations are going to go away. People perceived that dynamic would become the new thing, but we're not seeing that now. We're actually seeing the static and the dynamic coming together for a hybrid calibration.
Okay, so Dave, ADAS parts and system changes with each model year. Now, will this affect parts availability in new or old cars? And they'll be repairable if the parts are not available?
I believe that's a problem already with the supply chain shortages. Electronics have been hit hardest, I think. What I'm keeping an eye on, and I know this may be controversial, but I'm really interested to see what the industry worldwide how they're going to view these shortages and maybe their acceptance of green parts in ADAS components. That would be considered in the US fairly taboo right now to use anything considered used, but is that an option?
Yeah, I'll pick up on what Dave said there. There's obviously the genuine OEM part, but the ADAS technology in cars has moved very, very fast. A 2019 model year, 2020, 21, 22, those 4 different years of production might have 2, 3, or 4 different versions of ADAS equipment. So something like a bonnet or a front wing, some sort of pattern part manufacturer is going to copy those because they will be able to sell sufficient volume. But if an ADAS component was only in use for 1 year on a fairly low-selling model, what pattern part manufacturer is going to make their version of that ADAS module? It's not going to happen. So therefore, that car could be unrepairable in future. And the insurance company will have to write it off.
And that's a big problem, because there aren't enough cars to supply at the moment. So, Robert, I'm going to ask you the final question. What are the risks for body shops who fail to carry out or prevent poor ADAS calibrations and EV repairs?
It's not too emotional or overdramatic to state that the risk is to your business and all your blood, sweat, tears, heart and soul you put into it over the years. Even if you could survive the cost of a court case, your reputation will be shredded and you would find work providers would distance themselves from you every bit as quick as the public. So you really have to think about the fact that what will happen that day in court. As I said, the risk and liability is massive, far more than we ever saw in the past with ICE, petrol and diesel vehicles. And there is a bit of a misconception, again, that we talk about and hear about at IBIS events around the world, where people think, it's not a problem, I subcontract it. It's his problem, not my problem. And that's completely wrong. That's a myth. Once you accept the job from your work provider, you own it. It's your problem. So you need to make sure that if you do subcontract it, like Dave said, which is absolutely a viable and possible strategy for many body shops, nothing wrong with it, but you need to make sure that your subcontractor is following the same standards that you would have done in-house. Is their equipment calibrated? Do they document it and evidence it? Do they provide all the reports? Are they giving you the information for their job pack? Is their insurance sufficient and up to date? Just because you subcontract, you are still responsible and liable. You accepted the job from the work provider.
Thank you. That's so important, that last point, because you have accepted and you've got to give it back. So you're the person that is responsible for all of that.
Definitely. Your work provider has no contract with your subcontractor.
Yeah.
Only with you. You are liable.
All right. Well, that concludes that little segment that we have on EVs and ADAS. And now we're open to you. If you need to ask us any questions, please feel comfortable. We'll have a microphone for you. So if you have any questions to ask, there's your chance. Okay, we got a microphone over there. Okay. There's a gentleman over there. Oh, okay.
Sitting in the back of the room.
Makes you a smaller target. Nobody sees you in the corner. Here we are. Okay.
What's the chances of a battery having to come out of the vehicle?
Sorry, we can't hear you. Can you?
What's the chances of the battery having to come out of the vehicle? What type of accident?
Battery coming out of the vehicle.
Okay, it's a good question, John. The chances at the moment are less than 50%. Because there's a lot of fear, as Dave was saying, from the insurance company engineers being comfortable enough about the repairability of an accident where the battery may have to come out. So what they're doing is writing off that vehicle instead to reduce the liability for the insurer, especially while scrappage prices are so high. The vehicle has a high value to them, even though it's badly damaged. So at the moment, a lot less than 50%, John. But in future, that will rise. As people get more comfortable, more aware, that will happen more often. And then when you do that, as Dave said, you're going to look at space. These are big components. They need a lot of storage space. And you're going to need to look at investing in the correct battery table. For example, with Volkswagen, as Nick mentioned earlier, there's a lot of components underneath the battery. It comes in a tube underneath the battery, an integral part. If you just put it on a normal flatbed battery tray, you will crush that. And you'll have to buy a new battery as a body shop. Yeah, Dave just said if you pick that up, $30,000 in the United States.
Wow.
Okay, so low at the moment, John, going to increase in future.
Cheers.
Are you having to store the batteries in a different place of the workshop, in a caged area, or?
Yeah, you have to store them in a specific area. Again, you wouldn't put a high-value component on everything else on the vehicle just in the open workshop. It needs to go in a dedicated, fairly dust-free, reasonably consistently temperatured area where no one's going to knock it off or damage it or it's going to get in the way. They're not easy to pick up and move, mind. So you've got to put it somewhere that's out the way of the normal production.
Okay, that's great. Any more questions? No? Okay. So I'm going to ask the panelists now for a very short, concise, 1-minute summary of what they've seen today, what we've talked about. So if I can start with Nick,
Yep.
because I know you'll stick to the time. I'm just worried about the other side over there. So can you give us an idea sort of what your thoughts are?
So, when you're doing the repair process, make sure that all of your staff have a dedicated training program. Make sure they're attending all the courses that they need to. When you're investing in equipment, go with the reputable suppliers that are going to give you the backup and the support that you need should you have the questions and the answers. And that's about it for me.
Dave?
As a person who champions small business, independent collision operators, there's a lot of concern amongst my clients about being able to handle everything. And my recommendation to them is typically this: don't try to fix every vehicle that's out there. Pick your top 5 and start there. What are the 5 most common vehicles that are coming into my business, and how can we gear up to properly repair and do ADAS calibrations on those vehicles before we try to take on everything in the world, because it's big.
Robert, your thoughts?
Thoughts from me are ADAS and EV are toothbrush technologies. You're going to be using these a minimum twice a day. So there are significant opportunities. They are not obstacles. But don't dive into it. Start first with a robust strategy and a plan for what suits you. Everyone has the right choices, but the same choice is not right for everyone. So like Dave said, decide what's best for you, stick with your core market, and get a plan together. It's going to be more about what you stop doing and stop buying than what you do and do buy in future.
Thank you, gentlemen. That concludes this section. Now, we will stay around for another 15, 20 minutes. If you didn't want to talk in public, if you want to ask any of the panelists privately, I need to thank Autopromotech for giving us the opportunity to do this for you today through the international aftermarket meetings. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Nick, for being with us this morning. And thank you all for coming to listen to us and watch.
Come back at 2. Tell them to come back at 2.
Now, yeah, I'll get there. I'll get there. Now, we have got also to do another session, nothing to do with this, though. It's about paint and what's happening in the industry. Back here, 2 o'clock this afternoon. So if you'd like to come and join us, we'd love to see you again. Otherwise, enjoy your day. And as I said, we'll be here for another 5-10 minutes if you want to talk to us. Thank you again.